I mean, I love music, obviously. That's why I keep doing it and why I've chosen a career in it. But also, you can do music in a lot of different places in a lot of different ways. And I kept coming back to Blue Bear because of the community.
That was Blue Bear School of Music's Little Bears director, Tennessee Mowrey. I'm Jeff, and this is Storied San Francisco. In this episode, we meet Tennessee, as well as Blue Bear executive director, Stephen Savage. Stephen tells us his life story, leading up to his move to San Francisco in 1971, the year the school was founded. It's a journey that begins in the greater LA area, travels to Ohio briefly, then makes its way up the California coast, through the peninsula, and eventually to the city. Then we hear from Tennessee, who was born and raised in San Francisco. Surrounded by music thanks to his dad and his stepmom, Tennessee eventually took classes and later became a teacher at Blue Bear, where today he wears many hats. First up, here's Stephen Savage.
I do have my PhD in musicology. I don't really use that honorific very much, but one of my board members said, you need to put Dr. Stephen Savage on like the website and stuff in my email because it's more impressive. So, but actually I had a wonderful time going back to school and getting my PhD, and I do teach. I'm an adjunct part-time professor at San Francisco State.
Oh, yeah.
And I teach musicology there. Okay, well, I mean, I don't know how far to go back, but I was born in Los Angeles, and my parents, one of them came from Laramie, Wyoming, and one of them came from Akron, Ohio, but they met in LA, and I was born in Los Angeles, but when I was one, we moved to Pomona, which is a suburb. I lived there for 12 years, and then I lived in Claremont. My formative years, junior high and high school, were in Claremont. And
when would that have been? Like decade or what?
Well, I graduated high school in '66.
Got it. Okay.
So that's that was my whatever that was.
So late 50s.
Late 50s.
And 60s.
Yeah, I was
you were
a child of the 50s as a kid, and then an adolescent and a teenager in the 60s, which was a pretty exciting time. 66, 65, 66, my senior year in high school. It was all happening. It was all starting to happen. In fact, I saw one of the, I don't know if it was the first or the second Rolling Stones concert in Los Angeles. We drove into LA for that. I saw Bob Dylan, half acoustic, half electric in Santa Monica with the band.
That was a controversy, wasn't it, when he went electric?
It was what?
A lot of people didn't like that.
A lot of people didn't like it, but at that point, I mean, that the folk festival had already happened, and there'd been the backlash. And I think the people at this concert wanted to be there, and they weren't unhappy about him being electric.
Yeah.
I remember a few things about it, and I found a recording of it online recently, and a few of the things that happened were on that recording. Because I remember when he came out to do the first set, he was a little shaky, and he banged his guitar against the mic stand, and you can hear that on the recording. But that was an incredible show, and I've been a huge Dylan fan my entire life. And
what age were you when you were going to these shows?
I was 17 probably when I saw him.
Toward the end of your high school time?
Yeah, it was my senior year in high school. It was in 65 that I saw both the Stones and Dylan.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Was there ever a question you talked about, like, that's when rock and roll was really taking off? Was there ever a question for you of, like, being a part of it, like, or was it just like, no, I am going to be part of this whole thing?
I mean, I came to music fairly late. I started, my first instrument was banjo because of the Kingston Trio and the Limelighters. It was the folk period. I was sort of the end of the folk period. And actually my banjo teacher was Mike Stewart, who later formed the band The Wee Five, that had the one hit, You Were On My Mind. They were one of the one-hit wonder bands. Anyway, and then when I was 17 and I fell in love with Dylan and with rock and roll and the Beatles and the Stones and everything, it's when I took up the drums. So I didn't actually start playing drums until I was 17.
Okay.
And at that point, my fate was pretty well sealed.
Had you had any, prior to that, music classes or any
All I'd had is banjo lessons.
Yeah.
That was really all I had. And my mom was a singer, and she sang in the temple choir, and she was a big music person. I listened to, we were huge musical theater. I know all the early musicals, and Nat King Cole. I think when she was a teenager, she was one of the teenagers that screamed at.
Bing Crosby.
Who was the big heartthrob back then? It wasn't Bing Crosby. It was Frank Sinatra, of course.
Okay.
Frank Sinatra.
Blue eyes.
Obviously.
Anyway, that's all. So I grew up with a lot of music in the house, but she was a singer, and she loved Nat King Cole and Frank Sinatra and a lot of the crooners.
Mm-hmm.
But mostly we listened to all the musicals, Sound of Music in Oklahoma, and I think I still know all those songs by heart.
And when you say listen, you're talking about listening to records at home.
Listening to records, that's
Yeah.
right. Although we did also, they had a subscription to the Broadway shows in Los Angeles. So I saw a lot of those shows live. I remember seeing West Side Story when I was, I don't know, probably 10 or 11, and
Wow.
it was very impactful.
Yeah. At that early age, though, did you ever see yourself being not necessarily a musician, but like a performer of any sort?
Not
Or it just
not
didn't
so
never
much,
happen?
and I still have never seen myself as much of a performer, which is I think why I became a drummer, because you sort of hide behind the drums in the back. I've never been really comfortable as a performer.
Okay, that's actually leading to my next question, which was you said you had some banjo lessons, but then you decided that you wanted to play drums.
Exactly.
Was that why?
Probably. I don't think it was that conscious of a decision, but having been around music and music education my entire life, I've probably hundreds of times asked musicians why they play the instrument they play, and it's almost always the same answer, which is, I don't know. I was just attracted to this instrument. I just wanted to play the saxophone, or I wanted to play whatever, and so there's a natural affinity, and I talk to a lot of parents too that say, what should my kid play? What should I start my kid on? And I always say, just ask them
Just
what they
whatever
want to
they
play.
gravitate
It's what
toward.
they
Yeah.
want to play.
Yeah.
If they really don't know and really don't care, then you should start them on piano.
Okay.
But otherwise, they should play whatever they want to play. That's
Okay.
what it's all about.
I like that philosophy. So you're playing drums. You're still in high school, right?
Yeah.
Toward the end of were you playing already with friends or doing band stuff?
No. I was really just learning that senior year in high school, and then I went to college, and the first day or second day, there was another freshman out on the lawn with his guitar playing Dylan songs. And he's still one of my very best friends.
Nice.
And we ended up having several bands together and playing a lot of music together. So it wasn't really till college that I started playing in bands.
With other people.
Yeah.
Where did you go to college?
I went to Oberlin in Ohio
Oh, yeah.
for a year and a half. And then I had never been east of Las Vegas at that time. I thought I was going back east, actually.
Right.
But it turned out that Ohio, it was a great school, but it was the sleepiest possible place.
Right.
But we did go into Cleveland sometimes. I saw the Blues Project. I saw a bunch of bands in Cleveland.
If I can quote Spinal Tap here, big rock and roll town, Cleveland.
Yeah, right, exactly. It is.
Well, that's where isn't that where the Hall of Fame is?
I was just going to say, it is
There
where the
it
Rock
is,
and Roll
yeah,
Hall of Fame
yeah.
is now.
Yeah.
So then I transferred to UC Santa Cruz and basically played in bands. My professional debut was at the Catalyst in Santa Cruz.
Nice.
The original Catalyst. It was a great club.
And what year was that?
That would have been probably 69.
Okay.
Yeah.
What was the band called?
It was called Safe Cure, which was kind of ironic because we were pretty much the opposite of Safe Cure at that point in terms of abuse.
Yeah. What was your experience? Were you like immediately loving it, or what did you take away from that?
I mean, I loved it. I loved music. I loved playing. I loved playing live, although we were pretty rudimental. Yeah.
It was like bass guitar, drums, singer.
It was 2 guitars. It was basically the Beatles.
Okay.
Rhythm guitar, lead guitar. The rhythm guitar player, who is my friend that I met at Oberlin, and he had also moved out to California, and he was the singer. He's a wonderful singer. He's still a wonderful musician. Tennessee knows him a little bit, I think. Jim Tepperman.
Oh yeah, totally.
Yeah. So, so then I basically, I was like a year and a half in Santa Cruz, and then I moved to Palo Alto, and lived with a friend of mine from Oberlin's younger brother was going to Stanford, and I moved to Palo Alto and lived in the garage with him and a friend of his, and I played in a band that was all Stanford students except me.
Okay.
And that was really more my real professional experience, because we were like a frat band.
Okay.
So we played frat parties. So, we learned a lot of material and we were getting paid.
Writing original music?
No,
Or okay.
no, it was all covers.
All covers. Got it.
And we were called Big Money and Electricity.
Okay. I love it.
And then, actually, the 2 brothers that started the band, Wolfgang Strauss, that started the school, one of them had been a Stanford student and knew me from Stanford, and he called me and said, we're putting together a band in San Francisco and we need a drummer. And that's how I came here. And they had already decided to have a music school in order to survive until the band became famous.
Okay.
But they hadn't opened yet. When I joined the band, they had rented the place on Ocean Avenue. I was the last member. Richard was a keyboard player and Steve was the guitar player, and they had a bass player. And I joined the band about 2 months before we opened on Ocean Avenue.
And that would have been
71.
So
June of 71 is when we opened.
Okay.
So
literally this month is 50.
Yes.
Okay. And you moved here maybe in April or so.
Exactly. I moved in that spring of 71.
Were you conscious at the time that your journey, I mean, there's the one detour to Ohio, but like you're kind of inching your way up the coast and very much grew up a Southern California kid, and now you're almost in San Francisco, and there's that contrast.
Totally. And
They're very different places.
Very different. And I was a child of the suburbs, and I'd never lived in a city. I remember back when I was at Oberlin, we took a trip. Jim and I took a trip. We hitchhiked to New York, and I remember being in New York City. I was probably 18 years old, and being scared to death.
Okay.
It was like, whoa, where am I? And this is like so overwhelming. So it took me a while. So then I was in Santa Cruz, Palo Alto, and then I came to San Francisco. And I was ready for the city by then. I was 23 when we started this band, the school. And I was ready for the city, and I loved the city. But it was very different. And I never wanted to go back to the suburbs.
Do you want to, I kind of want to end your part on some of your first impressions of the city, and where did you live when you first moved here?
When I first moved here, I lived at 21st in California.
Oh, yeah.
I've lived all over the city, in just about every neighborhood at one time or another. But that's where we were living, and it was a bunch of us. And I mean, we were just raging hippie kids, So we were like, do you know this song? It's an Iggy Pop song might be called The City. Anyway, it's sort of his impressionistic vision of being in the city. And that song really reminds me of what my experience was in the city. And it was like, this is my playground. This is my world. And, we would be hanging out at North Beach until 3 a.m.
Yes.
It was...
Do you want to name drop some places y'all would hang out?
Where we would hang out?
Yeah.
Well,
especially North Beach.
Yeah, North Beach especially, I think. That's where the action was. That's where the clubs were then.
Savoy Tivoli.
It was before South of Market and Slims and all of that stuff. That came later. And we would hang out in the Haight too. That was still happening, and there were some clubs there. And the school was down on Ocean Avenue, which is sort of in a weird corner of the city. And we were all over, but we were also exploring the city. I didn't know the city really not at all at that point. So then while we still had the school and still in the band, Richard Strauss, who's with the keyboard player, is still a good friend, and is on the board at Blueberry. We moved to Nob Hill and lived there for quite a while. Lived in Noe Valley a bunch. And now I'm an East Bay boy.
Okay.
That's what happens.
I lied. One more question. How would y'all get around town? Cars, bus, cabs?
I had a car. I had a Bug, an ancient Bug, which got stolen in front of the school one time. Sure. It got stolen, and later that day, reported it. Later that day, I see it driving down Ocean Avenue.
Oh my God.
And some kid is driving it, and I run out there, and I catch up to him, and I get in the car, and he basically says, I don't know, somebody gave me this. It was a worthless car. So I just let him go. He left. But so I had a Bug, and the school, the band had a van.
Okay.
So we used that a lot. Okay. I didn't do the buses much back then.
All right. Well, I think we got you up to you moved here and y'all are about to open the school.
That's right.
So, okay, we'll switch over.
I was born in San Francisco.
Okay.
I was born at San Francisco General. My parents had met a couple of years before in the city, although they were both at Wesleyan at the same time.
Oh.
Which is very interesting. They didn't meet at all there.
Right.
In fact, my mom was dating someone who lived on the first floor of my dad's house when he was living on the second floor, and they still never met. But hey, whatever. They found each other in San Francisco, and they were only living in the city for a few months after I was born, and then they moved to Marin. I went to school in Marin. Through high school, my parents split up. My dad moved to the East Bay. He moved to Point Richmond.
Oh yeah.
I started taking my dad is quite musical. He plays piano. He's played in bands for most of his adult life. My mom's side of the family has a lot of music in it, although my mom is not a musician herself.
It skipped her generation.
Well, yeah, not even her generation, just like
just her.
just her.
Yeah.
She likes to sing, but
I'm sure she's got other great qualities.
She has so many great qualities.
Yeah. We can't all be musicians.
No, that's right. Yeah. But yeah, there was like a concert pianist in Vienna, a couple of generations back or whatever.
Oh, wow.
There was some music there for real.
Yeah.
And so my dad and my mom had split up. My dad had a piano in his house, and I was taking classical piano lessons there from about age 6 to age 8. And this will be important later about my philosophy about teaching. I didn't like it. Okay. I didn't like what I was learning. I dropped piano.
Okay.
I dropped the lessons. I stopped. And if I didn't love music so much, and if my parents didn't, my dad and stepmom in particular, didn't play a lot of music, that would have been it. That would have been the end of my journey. But it wasn't. They had a piano still, even though I wasn't playing anymore, because both my dad and my stepmom played. And there was a book of Beatles songs, a fake book of Beatles songs, so I could play the songs I liked, play the chords I liked, and sing the words. And I had learned enough piano at that point to play some chords, and if I was having trouble with something, my parents would come over and say, okay, actually, to make it a major chord, just shift your one finger like this. Okay, great. Cool. And then they knew I didn't really like the lesson thing, so they would leave for 45 minutes after they had said that and just sort of let me figure it out. Anyway, I got pretty good at the piano. And then I became a teenager, and I picked up the bass and the guitar and a number of other stringed instruments, started playing the drum kit as well. And a lot of that happened at Blue Bear.
Right, because you were a student.
Yes.
Okay.
So my stepmom, Susie, is another huge reason that I'm as musical as I am. She was touring with a lot of quite famous acts in the 80s. She was on tour with Mick Jagger. She was on tour with Prince. She was on tour with Billy Idol. These sort of big names.
Was she with Prince on the Purple Rain tour?
She was. She was with Sheila and
what did
Prince.
she? Yeah. So, and what did she do in that?
She
in her
played
capacity?
keys and sang backups and might have played some acoustic guitar.
Okay, so I must have seen her because I saw Prince. You saw on that tour in Seattle.
Oh my gosh, that's so cool.
At Reunion Arena in Dallas, Texas, on January 1st, 1985. So I've seen your stepmom.
You have. She had huge hair, and she was 35 years younger.
Right. So was I. I was in 5th grade and I smoked my first joint from like the nosebleed seats.
God.
I didn't care because it was Prince and Sheila E. And I was like, I'm in heaven right now. That's awesome that, and not just the Prince part, but all the other people that she was touring with. That's amazing.
She's really good. She's really good at music, and she's got an incredible ear, like great performance chops, and sort of knows all the tricks of the trade, and was teaching at Blue Bear.
Okay.
She and Bonnie Hayes had started up the summer camp program because each of them had teenagers that wanted to play in rock bands, and there was nothing like that for us anywhere in the Bay Area.
Right.
Rock band land didn't exist yet. All of these other sort of,
School of Rock over in the Mission.
Yeah, none of these were there. This was in 2004.
Okay.
2003, 2004, something like that.
Had you played with other people yet before you came to school?
I had a band in 7th and 8th grade where I was playing keys and there were some guitar players, but mostly we just like talked about how we wanted our hair to be long and what bands we thought were cool, and like how we could impress girls playing the music, and we didn't actually learn a whole lot of music. That all changed when I started taking the rock band classes at Blue Bear over the summer, and I was taking classes. I was playing keyboards for a while, and then I started playing bass and some guitar and some other stuff, and eventually started student teaching and interning in some of the classes, particularly in the songwriting camp. And then by the time I'd gone to college and come back, I was actually teaching over the summers. And then I graduated from college and was hired in more full-time capacity, teaching some different stuff, both during the school year and the summer, and then doing some other work around Blue Bear. And I've basically just been... Well, it's very hard for me to have now I have a nice job title. It's very defined what I do, but for a long time I did not have that. And there's a couple of our catalogs where I am the ghost in the machine, officially.
Whatever needs to be done.
Whatever needed to be done, I was happy to do it.
Did you, when you first started going to school here, did you like music school right away? Or?
Oh, yeah.
Okay.
Oh, my God. Totally. I love music, obviously. That's why I keep doing it and why I've chosen a career in it. But also... You can do music in a lot of different places in a lot of different ways, and I kept coming back to Blue Bear because of the community. There was a community of kids that were going to these camps over the summer, and we were all getting better together, and we were sometimes playing together over the school year, and we were challenging each other just to get better, right? It was this sort of jockeying a little bit, but also very friendly, and that was great, and I got to know the teachers, and by the time I was a little bit older, I knew a lot of the teachers and administrators pretty well, and some of the adult students and some of the teenage students and all of that. And so when I would be hanging out behind the desk or whatever, there was all these friends that were coming in and out of the front door all the time. Mm-hmm. That was really nice. I mean, it was work, but also it was community.
And community. Yeah. You felt a sense of belonging.
Totally.
Yeah.
Totally. The smell, actually, Blue Bear, the hall, that one hall has a very interesting smell.
Okay.
It's potentially all the burnt corkboard that we use in the as the soundproofing for all the private lesson rooms, but it has like a peculiar smell that I've never smelled anywhere else, and I love it. I love it so much.
Smell memories.
Yeah, totally.
Totally.
And I got, it's been the pandemic, and I've only been into the school 3 or 4 times since March 2020, and each time I come in, I go in the front.
Yep. Deep breath.
Oh, I'm back. It's so nice.
That was Tennessee Mowrey. On the next episode of Storied San Francisco, Stephen tells us all about the founding and 50 years of Blue Bear School of Music, located in the Fort Mason Center for the Arts and Crafts. Part 2 drops this Thursday. Music for the podcast was produced, performed, and curated by Otis McDonald. Original photography is by Michelle Kilfeather. Aaron Lim of Bitch Talk Podcast is our contributing producer. And the show is produced and hosted by me, Jeff Hunt. Now in our 4th season, we have more than 150 episodes available on our website, storiedsf.com, or wherever you listen to podcasts. If you can, subscribe, rate, and review our show so we can reach even more folks. And if you'd like to drop us an old-fashioned email, we'd love that. The address is storiedsf@gmail.com. Thanks for listening. Stay safe, stay strong, stay healthy, and we'll see you next time.
This podcast is a proud member of the BFF.FM podcast network. Learn more at podcasts.bff.fm.
BFF.FM, best frequencies forever.